Okay. Well, we got a lot of Law Lite planned out, and things are looking good for the future. So, do you have a ask the expert question or not?
You know
I
what?
stumped you because I noticed you didn't have a piece of paper, so we'll skip that.
I came
Hey,
over. Well, it's such a full episode, and we've had so many experts already. I don't think we need to.
Yeah, she's rolling her eyes. Hey, hello, everybody. I hope you've recovered from Christmas, and we are in that place we call the home stretch between Christmas and the New Year. This is Law Lite, Travis Holtree and PJ.
Hello.
Foreman Watson Holtree, brought to you every time from the nice studio here at 530 Frederica Street, the high rise.
Studio in quotes.
That's right. We are not in a studio, but it works. We have nice equipment here, and we are thankful for that. Anyhow, hope everybody had a Merry Christmas. I hope it was a great Christmas for everybody. And like I said, we are excited, PJ, because we're just a few days away, easy for me to say, a few days away from 2020,
yes,
starting
which
a
is
new year.
really hard to believe.
Yeah, and you know, one of the things that you and I talked about was rather than talk about a bunch of New Year's resolutions
that we won't stick to
anyway. And we've already kind of talked about how 2020 we're going to be talking. Our whole motto, our whole slogan for the year is, your problem, our passion. So we've kind of already talked about that.
Right.
But rather, we're going to spend some time today, talk to a few people here at the office, and kind of reflect on where we've come in 2019.
Yeah.
And there have been a lot, if you don't realize it, but we have the changes in the office as far as the building is concerned, and so much has happened in 2019. Yep. And I know that, you've been a big part of that, and a lot of the graphic art and the videos and things we've done to promote the firm. So, you and I are going to take a look back and kind of do a year in review. What do you think about that?
I think it sounds good. Let's do it.
All right.
How are we doing it?
I thought you knew because you said let's do it. All right. So what we're going to do is we've asked a few people to come in, and I think first we have Chris Safreed. And Chris, as you know, he's just down the hall from you.
Yep.
I knew Chris years ago when he was at Moore, Malone and Safreed, the spooky place.
Mm-hmm.
Remember
the funeral home.
The funeral home, right?
Yeah.
Chris and I worked together there for several years when I worked for Charlie Moore. And Chris's practice is one where he practices predominantly in workers' compensation law. Has been practicing, I believe, for almost 32 years. We'll have to ask him here when he gets in here. But we're going to talk to Chris, and he's one of our new hires. It's one of the other big things that happened in 2019 is that Chris joined us, and he is establishing an incredible workers' compensation practice. I mean, we joke with him. Have you ever gone into his secretary's office
Shannon,
and seen all the cork board?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and so that's where he puts all of his cases, and we joke about how the whole office is going to be a padded room soon because of how quickly his caseloads were.
I was teasing Shannon because of how much her office smells like cork now.
Yeah, and Chris's nickname, Corky, so
I didn't realize that. Yeah,
that's right. And it's not because he drinks wine. It's because of the cork boards, and we'll ask him about those cork boards. And then we'll talk to Shannon. I think it's important to bring Shannon in because, again, I knew Shannon many years ago when I was starting my practice over at Charlie Moore's office, and Shannon's gone to a couple places. And when Chris came over, one of his big things was he wanted Shannon to join him. And so we're going to talk to Shannon, and I don't know about you. I mean, you may get to talk to her more than me, but, I mean, what a wonderful person. We are so fortunate.
Super down to earth.
To have her a part of this staff, and she is so loyal. And so excited just to get some of her feedback on what she thinks about coming into the firm. They all came over. And it's been here just a little more than a year, so it'd be interesting to get her take on the past year here at the office. And then finally, we brought on Kara, who started working here in Jollay, and Kara came over from Charlie Moore's office. She's a litigation assistant and works down at the end of the hall predominantly for Tyler, does most of the work for Tyler. And I'll tell you something I've noticed, and I even told her this the other day, is she's all business, man. I mean, she sits down
she
there,
is.
and, a lot of people will engage in what I call water cooler talk around the office, But Kara is head down. It is 100 miles per hour from the time she hits the door.
Yeah.
Works hard. So we'll get her in here and talk to her. So I think first we have Chris. Is that right? And
Yep.
So we'll bring Chris in. And but before we get Chris, PJ, what as you reflect on 2019, what do you think one of the biggest changes for the firm has been?
One of the biggest. Not really changes, but growth areas that I think we have is the marketing.
Right.
And I know I see that directly because I'm part of that, but I've noticed our presence around the community has grown so much more. Because when I first started here, it was mainly radio, advertisements, and billboard. But now it's gone from that. We still do those things. But it's also, you've been going and being so much more active with the radio station, going and sitting down and talking to them. Now we also have the Tuesday tips that we've been doing,
which has been a great feedback.
Yeah,
on those.
yeah, and that's actively educating the public as to the what exactly it is that we do around here and all the different facets there are, and kind of just planting seeds and giving people nuggets of information about those different facets. And then, of course, we have the podcast, which was a big one. And I didn't know when I started here, I never thought I would say, "Hey, I'm going to be producing a podcast."
Right.
But here we are, and it's funny because even Logan wants to be a YouTuber, but he is he's become super jealous of this because it's technically because of this. I mean, we are professional podcasters at this point.
That's right.
And I never thought that would.
Oh, it's awesome.
But yeah. So there's so much that we've been doing. The social media presence has gained a lot of traction, and really, our relationships with the different radio stations, Cromwell especially, they've been doing a lot of stuff for us. So it's just been really exciting to see that kind of growth.
Yeah, in 2019, it's been exponential. It's been more creative, and it's something that we're just going to continue to do. We're going to continue to look for creative ways to market, to be involved, so that people, again, see that we are down to earth, hardworking. We're here for them. We are in their community. We're in their town, in their corner. All the things that we've said, we are, and so that's interesting. I'll say this about the podcast. I was in a meeting just this week in Cincinnati for the Kentucky Justice Association as a part of our strategic planning for the year, and there's a lot I can't talk about from that meeting, but one of the things that they're looking at doing, the Kentucky Justice Association, is starting a podcast. And so they, in their discussions, they were like, does anybody know what it takes to start this? Does anybody know? And so I stood up and I said, I happen to know quite a bit about what it takes to start it. And I was like, in fact, I have at my firm a weekly podcast. And you would have thought that I lit off an M80 in there. I mean, people are like, you have a podcast? In the breaks, when we would take breaks, I bet I had 20 or 30 people question me about our podcast because it's creative. It's a new method of getting something out. But our approach, our content, is something that I think makes ours unique, and that is they get a little bit of an explanation in each podcast about the law, about the inward workings of a law office, about our thought process, about our mission statement, and but then on the other hand, there's some interesting, funny stories along the way, and that was what we dreamed it to be.
Yeah.
So
and I too have been getting a lot of really good feedback, and it has been interesting because I have a friend who has been doing podcasting for about 5 years. And I can remember him after the first episode dropped, came back to me and he was like, dude, for someone who's never done podcasting before, that first episode, that's a solid, it's solid. It sounds great. So, and then I think so far the most interesting thing has been is we had some clients come in, and they had been listening to the podcast, and I'm sure they probably met you, but they up to that point, but they had never met me before. And I remember when I had to go down to the lobby to get them because they were coming in for settlement demand interview. I went down and I called out their name, and the husband turned around and he goes, "You must be PJ." And he stood up and shook my hand like he was meeting a celebrity. And then we ended up talking all about the podcast when we got, and it was just so neat.
I've gotten a couple of things this week where people have sent me a picture of their where they got notice on Spotify, and there's advertisements in it, you know, where and so one of the signs that people notice traffic on your podcast is that the advertisers will go there, you know, and are okay with you.
And they saw ours on there?
Right. So
awesome.
Yeah. Okay. And so we're getting a little traction there. And then I had a friend of mine sent me a screenshot of when our last episode dropped, he got a push notice on his phone that because he had subscribed on iTunes, it sent him a notice that says Law Lite episode has a new episode. Click here.
That's
you know.
Cool.
So he was like, man, it's working. You know, it's working. So
and somebody said you have a soothing voice, so it doesn't get much better than that.
How that comes about. But anyway, so yeah, the perfect example, and that's one of the reasons we want to bring a few others in here and just see what their thoughts are about being a part of the team and what they've looked at as far as the year in review. We've had a great year, a super year. One of the things we were excited about in 2019 was that Chris Safreed came over, and this was his first full year with us, and what a great addition. Chris is with us. Chris, just say hello.
Hello.
So Chris and I actually met Chris when I first started practicing law in Owensboro. He and I practiced together over with the law firm of Moore, Malone, and Safreed. And Chris, you were with Charlie for how many years?
I was there for 32 years.
Yeah, and while you were with Charlie, the focus of your practice was, you had kind of 2 or 3 different things you did over there.
Yeah, I did all of our criminal work. I did all of our workers' comp. I did some personal injury work and some Social Security disability work and some odds and ends along the way.
Right. So I guess toward the end of 2018, you kind of reached out to me and said that, Charlie was wrapping up his practice and you wanted to keep practicing and you wanted to get somewhere where you could hone in on one area of law. So we kind of made that happen, didn't we?
We did.
Yeah.
I've always enjoyed workers' compensation because I think it's helping people, and I wanted to concentrate on that and narrow my practice. And with this firm and the advertising that's done, we were able to help a lot of people this past year.
Yeah, and your practice is growing. I mean, you kind of have a system that you use down there, that like a system of cork boards. And I noticed on the accounts payable that we've bought some more cork boards, and so that means your caseload is growing.
It is. Actually, when I came here, I think I had 2 workers' compensation cases, and I don't know how many we've already resolved in the year, but I think we're sitting at about 30 now, so we're filling up the walls.
You're always coming down here and we're talking about things you notice about what the workers' compensation insurance industry is doing to injured workers. What are some of the things you've noticed over the last year especially?
Yeah, even more so in the last year. What I've noticed is the way that some of these adjusters for the workers' compensation insurance are approaching these cases. They're more aggressive in getting people to see their doctors for the sole purpose of terminating their benefits. They're also pushing settlements and not always being truthful with the clients about how the system works.
Well, you brought a letter down here a couple of months ago where the adjusters, there's no getting around, we'll just call it what it was. It was a flat-out lie, right? And you called him to the carpet on that, right?
I did. He sent one of my clients for an IME, which he's entitled to do, and then sent my client a letter telling my client what the doctor actually said, and none of it was true. He said that he could return to work without restrictions. That was not true. He said that his impairment rating was one thing, and that was not true. And had I not been there, I don't know that my client would have known any better and may have settled his case for a fraction of what it was worth.
I'm going to jump in real quick, and this is just because I'm kind of from like the outsider's approach, but what is an IME?
independent medical exam when they are allowed to have a workers' compensation plaintiff see their doctor for an opinion.
Right. So they sent this guy to a doctor, and then they reported in a letter to the client. Well, he wasn't a client yet, but to the injured worker, hey, this doctor we sent you to said that you could return to work without restrictions. He said your rating is this, and it wasn't. And so Chris, if that guy wouldn't have come to Chris and Chris gotten a hold of that IME report and been able to compare it to what that guy was saying, he would have fallen for those lies, and instead able to help the guy and get him a lot more than they were trying to represent, or going to get him a lot more. Is that case still going on, Chris?
Yes,
okay.
It's still going on. Now, the other thing that they do that bothers me is they're telling people that they have to see the doctor that the insurance company chooses, which is another flat-out lie.
Yeah.
Because in workers' compensation, you choose your doctor. They have the right to have a second opinion, but they don't dictate who you see and who you treat with.
Right. Well, PJ and I are talking all the time about how when you've done this as long as you and I have, you have to come to grips, if you're going to do what we do for a living, with the fact that the insurance industry is in this for their gain. They're not in it for the well-being of our clients. And as long as there's attorneys to stand in that gap to protect these people, the system will work. But if people like you and I don't stand in that gap for people, then the insurance companies will run rampant over these people, won't they?
They will. And, there might be an occasion where somebody has a settlement offer from an insurance company and they come here and it's on the up and up.
Right.
And if it's on the up and up, I'll tell them, settle the case. You don't need me, and I won't,
Right.
You don't need to give any of your settlement up to an attorney.
Right.
But that's rare.
Right. Well, listen, I appreciate you taking a little time today. I know that you're busy, but one thing I do want to say is the culture here at FWH, you've come in, you've jumped right in. We have eat-ins here at the office. We're always bringing food around. You bring us deer jerky. For the listeners, one of the reasons we do this podcast is to kind of be transparent about who we are. How is FWH different from your perspective?
Well, you told me coming in that we were a family, and we are. I've realized that. Everybody here works together. The atmosphere is fantastic. I don't see, everybody is concerned. They're not just putting their time in. They actually care about their cases and our clients, and it makes a big difference.
Right. Well, we're happy to have you, and we're going to talk here in just a second. We're going to bring Shannon in, who is your assistant, and you were tickled to death to be able to get Shannon back, right?
Yes, Shannon was my secretary years ago for over 10 years, and then she moved on to another job, so when I found out I was coming here, the first thing I did was contact her, and she was more than happy to come, and she's a great assistant, and we make a great team.
I think she's a little nervous, PJ, about being a part of this. We're going to go grab her and bring her in here, and so we'll do good. All right? Thanks, Chris. I appreciate your time. All right, so now that was good to hear from Chris, right?
It was.
But Chris bragged about his selection, like when he was going to come over here, he said that he had to have.
You were a first draft pick.
Shannon, that's right. So we brought Shannon in here. Chris, we booted Chris out of here, and Shannon has taken his seat here. Shannon, just say hi.
Hello.
All right. So Shannon, now you and we met early in my career actually because you worked over at Moore, Malone and Safreed for Chris, right?
That's correct.
Right. And then I guess when it was with the birth of your child or something, you took some time off or took a little time away from being a legal secretary and stayed at home. And then when your son started to get a little older, you made your way back into being a legal secretary, correct?
Well, yes and
no.
no.
Do I have that wrong?
I was off for a little bit after I had Jacob, and I came back, but then I left again.
All right. And so then, but when you came back, Chris had continued practicing, and you went to work, I guess, for a different firm. And
That's
so
correct.
then Chris made a phone call to you.
Yes.
At the end of 2018 and said, hey, I'm going to be making a move to Foreman Watson Holtree, and would you consider coming? Is that right?
That is correct.
Did that make you happy to hear that?
It did.
All right.
We worked very well together.
Yeah, I was going to say, some people just from a legal assistant, legal secretary position, there's just a compatibility with the attorney, and you've always had that with Chris.
Yes,
Yeah.
always, just from the very beginning.
So, you came basically across the street, right?
True.
Because you worked right across the
Yes.
street from the high rise here. And you joined Chris. So from someone who has a pretty extensive background in being a legal secretary and working with different lawyers and different firms. How has it been for you with your first full year here at Foreman Watson?
This has been my most enjoyable place to work. The people here are wonderful. Everybody cares about what they do, and they want to really help people.
Yeah.
And you like to work with community outreach, and I've always wanted to do that, and it's just fit very well with who I am.
I can tell you this, and it's not just me that notices it. You're very conscientious about your job, and Chris brags highly on you. You do have to be a little flexible to work for Chris, don't you?
Yes, very much so.
Like he's kind of got these like old school habits.
Correct.
Right? Like,
yes.
What's the one
That's
that,
fine.
like, so your office is like lined in cork boards. Is that right?
That is correct.
PJ, are we lying? Her office
Oh no, it smelled of cork
Right.
there for a while.
And so what we have cork boards, and Chris puts up every case he has.
Yes.
Has a few sheets of paper that are pinned up there with a
Yes.
thumbnail, right?
Yes.
And he stands in there like he is directing the symphony, right? Isn't that what he does?
I have not seen that firsthand.
Have you ever seen an attorney that has every one of his cases posted on the wall? It's like wasn't there a movie, A Beautiful Mind, or something like that? It's like Chris has all these things posted all over the place, and he stands right there and he talks to you about all those cases. Doesn't
Yes.
he?
That and that's a good thing because it keeps us in line.
It's his method of staying on top of what's going on in every
Yes.
case. And every attorney
Yes.
has a different way of doing that.
That
But
is
his
correct.
is corkboard in his secretary's office.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. And I have my own step stool.
So you can pin them up there.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. And tell me, I heard a rumor that we've had to order 16 more squares of corkboard because his caseload is expanding. Yeah, and I've heard the
And that's
wine
fine.
industry is short on cork.
Yeah, it's funny that you said that because I was just thinking that that's the most ingenious way of getting away with drinking wine at work. It's just be like, oh yeah, no, it's the workload. I got to put cork on the wall.
Well, we've actually, Chris. Well, I didn't do it while he was our guest here on the podcast, but I've named him. His nickname is Corky, because of all the cork. So. Wrapping things up, Shannon, seriously, we really appreciate having you. Every time I walk by your office, it's nose to the grindstone. It is no nonsense. You're conscientious about your work, and I know Chris handles a whole different type of law than I handle. He handles workers' compensation law almost predominantly now.
Right.
And I know that if a client comes through our doors with a work injury situation, that you and Chris have them taken care of. And that means a lot for me because it's like I don't have to babysit that part of the firm.
Right.
It's like I know
Right.
it's happening and it's going well. And so welcome. I
Thank
look
you.
forward to our future. And thank you for stepping outside of your comfort zone and coming in here and being a member, a guest on our podcast.
I appreciate
All right?
your time.
All right.
I told you it wasn't going to be that bad.
Merry Christmas.
That's true. I love it here, by the way.
We're going to bring Kara in here, PJ. That'll be, that's the one that's going to be like pulling teeth, is getting Kara in here. So we'll see what we
Oh
can
yeah,
do.
I just had a conversation with her, 7 minutes ago, and she's on pins and needles
to come down here.
Yeah, I mean, she's
well, you
freaking
can
out.
go down, Shannon, and tell her it's not that bad. All right, now we sent Shannon down, and she tag your it to Kara, and Kara does not want to be in here. Kara came to our firm July of this year. Is that right, Kara?
August.
August. See how well I know the people that work for us. So Kara, you've on this podcast over several of the weeks, I have talked about sort of my background and where I came from, and an attorney that was instrumental in teaching me a lot was a guy named Charlie Moore, who's been mentioned here, and I have great respect for Charlie. But Kara actually worked for Charlie as basically his primary legal assistant and secretary for how many years?
Almost 14.
Okay. And so when Charlie was retiring, or notified everybody he was retiring, Kara knew that she needed to look for other places to work. And so through Chris, who talked here just a few minutes ago with us. Chris encouraged Kara to reach out to me, and over a series of meetings, I persuaded her, I guess, sort of to come work at Foreman Watson Holtry. But in doing so, I asked you kind of to step out of your comfort zone because you were going to come over and work predominantly for Tyler Johnson, and Tyler did work that's, kind of outside of what you did for Charlie, isn't that right? And what was some of the new stuff what are some of the things that Tyler is handling on a daily basis that you really weren't doing with Charlie?
All of the family law.
Right.
I mean, all of the divorces, child custody. I was not familiar. I was familiar with maybe 2 divorces.
Right.
The whole 13.
So in 14 years, you've done a handle, and those were bigger divorces.
Yes.
But so now with Tyler, half of his practice is family law stuff, and just managing his schedule because of that, and then there's a lot of pleadings that get filed and a lot of things. So that was new for you, right?
Oh, yes.
And then we have a whole different case management system that keeps up with everything that's being done, and I know from working with Charlie that was not a focus of how he managed his cases, because he tended to handle bigger cases and weren't as many of them, and so the moving parts of it were easier to keep track of. He had like a book with cards in it, right?
Yes.
Yeah. We've talked about those Monday morning meetings. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, they started to be just, once every couple of weeks. But yeah, same meetings.
Yeah. We brought you over, and I guess just sort of as we're looking at the year in review, it's a big step for you and for your son to start something new. With regards to Foreman Watson Holtry and your work here, are you glad you made that move? Or of course, it's a loaded question. I'm sort of your supervisor, but what's it been like for you, honestly?
No, at first when I realized how much I was going to have to learn as far as what Tyler was doing and what I was going to be helping him with, it stressed me out a little bit, but I think I've gotten more of a grasp on it now, and I've been totally pleased with the people that work here. I really have, and just thankful for the help. Everybody's been patient. Yeah. And so it's been good.
Well, one of the things we're looking at going into 2020 is kind of revamping our motto and our firm mission and that kind of thing. And we've selected, in fact, you're wearing the shirt on the back, it says, "Your problem, our passion." And one of the things is that I'm looking for in everybody from top to bottom, from the guys that work 10 hours a week helping us with filing, all the way up to the top, to my job as the managing law partner, that each of us are passionate about what we do, that we bring, even though it's hard some days, our A game every day to try our hardest for our clients. And that's something that I hope resonates. And I know Tyler, very aggressive, very active, and that you're working with him every day, and you see that with him. But we're glad to have you, and we look forward. So next year when we have all of our new people in, you're going to be a veteran, and you won't have to come in here and step outside your comfort zone again and be on the podcast.
Fine.
That's okay. We're glad that you were a part of our 2019 and look forward to the future.
And I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Now, PJ, we're wrapping this one up, man.
We are.
This has been a great episode. Looking back at 2019, we've talked about it, but in summary, doubled our caseload in 2019. Twice as many cases have been processed this year by Foreman Watson Holtry than any other year.
We've all been very busy.
And from an income standpoint, while we've had a significant increase in costs because of bringing on a lot new staff and bringing on new attorneys, we've talked to Davin, and Davin's brand new this year.
Yep.
It's been a record year, and I don't see things changing, and I look forward to 2020. We're everything looks good and poised for a bright future for us. So now, as far as the podcast is concerned, you've come up with some great ideas, right? Is one of them the responses that I give you to emails that are dumb or something like that? Wasn't that one that you wanted to do?
Yeah, I have a list of things going forward. Actually, Davin and I talked about it like a week or two ago.
Okay. Well, we've got a lot of Law Lite planned out, and things are looking good for the future. So we're going to end real quick. Do you have an Ask the Expert question or not?
You know
I stumped you because I noticed you didn't have a piece of paper, so we'll skip that.
I came over. Well, it's such a full episode.
We don't need that.
And we've had so many experts already. I don't think we need to.
Yeah, she's rolling her eyes. Hey, but seriously, the next time we're doing this, it'll be a new year, and
will.
we're going to be ready to go. So signing off from the 530 Frederica Street, the high-rise white tower, this is Law Lite. Law less legal, law done right. PJ, you have anything you want to say in closing?
No.
Put some of that music on. Let's get out of here.